Today in this workshop/presentation we're going to talk how to set up or to dip your fingers on setting up a Nextcloud instance using Docker containers. First I start introducing myself. My name is Gerjan Lleshaj. I am a system administrator and a technical support at Cloud 68. Also I am a member of Open Lux Hackerspace Albania. On my free time I usually go again to computers. I play CTF with other members of Ole. Also, I like thrift shopping for finding good PC parts.
Yeah, so Gary can find a PC part that is supposed to cost like thousands of dollars, and he has found it for $5. So.
Is that how you found the printer?
Yes.
So you can have
yeah, of course.
A little bit about me as well, because I forgot to put my slide in the last moment. I'm a colleague of Gary. I also work at cloud68.co. Oh, the camera's there. Sorry. Hi. So I'm also a colleague with Gary at cloud68.co, and I'm also a member of the Albanian Hackerspace. I don't like thrift shopping though, so I only find expensive deals.
Well, for everyone who don't know what Nextcloud is a platform, it's an open source one, which is an alternative to Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, or whatever, any other proprietary things. It's secure, it's privacy in mind,
And it's very cool.
yeah. Also, it's
As you can see, it has a lot of features. We can go over them. But the most important thing is that if you see here at mobile/desktop clients, Nextcloud is something that we can access from the browser, but also from our phones and devices as well.
Well, as the title of the presentation was, setting up Nextcloud using containers. What are containers? Containers are a form of how developers can package their software. On a container, it contains every package binary that the software needs to be run.
Whereas from the system administration perspective, containers are a form of virtualization that is supposed to be more effective than running virtual machines, because you don't need to run the operating system 5 times for 5 different containers.
Or even better, you can explain it as a form of portable BSD.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Portable BSD gel. But
Yeah.
it is probably globally various operating systems.
Yeah. Okay. Also, Docker. So Docker in itself is not what containers are, but when we talk about containers, we always think of Docker. Usually that's because Docker is the most widespread tool that's used to publish, create and publish, but also to use said containers in your environment.
Well, let's try to do a short demo. What we're going to do is SSH to our server.
So, for those, if at any point you have a question about something that we are not explaining, please let us know. In the meantime, if you don't know about SSH, we can think of it as a way of connecting to a remote computer so that we're able to send commands to it.
Well, we SSH to our server. The next step is to, because we need Docker to run the containers, is to add the Docker repo and install the Docker. What we are going to do, like every other sysadmin do, is like Google.
So the reason we are adding, there is Docker support in Ubuntu. However, it's maintained in a different life cycle from the release of Docker itself. So what we want to do is, first of all, verify if we are humans, which is a challenge in of itself. But if we are humans, what we have to do is tell our computer where to find the newest version of Docker. Oh, are we humans?
Yeah,
Nice.
fortunately.
Nice.
instruction from the Docker website.
There you go.
Let's go create the GMT.
So first we're creating a directory, which is where we store the public key corresponding to that repository. We can go into more technical details, but the easiest way to explain is a form of security to verify that the file we are downloading is actually from download.docker.com and not from another site pretending to be that. Did you run apt update?
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason we run apt update is because after we add a repository to our computer, what we then have to do is we have to say, hey, do you know, like, so computers write a list where they can find every, you can think of it as a list where they can find every software that they can install. What we want to do is tell our computer to update that list because we also added the Docker repository. I know it looks very hackery, but all we're doing is...
I mean, the package managers are only like a Unix type deal or something like that because, well...
In the Windows.
Well,
yeah, Windows. Actually, Windows has Winget, but who uses Winget? Let's be real. Actually,
Yeah.
nobody uses Winget.
Yeah, Chris Titus does.
What?
Chris Titus is the guy which has a YouTube channel like deploys Windows for fun.
Okay, have we used Linux before? We have, okay. Because I was going to explain a bit more about package managers, but yeah, Windows is also starting to have package managers because it turns out it's a pretty convenient way to manage software.
Well, depending the use case.
Depending the use case, of course.
And the user itself, for example, for an average user, it's more easy to somehow obtain with a black flag a software,
Right.
and just click next, and just use it.
Sure.
But for other
It
applications,
depends on the use case. It's always dependent on, at the end of the day, these are tools. They're not good, they're not bad. How we use them defines whether we're using them right or wrong.
I'm going to install Docker Compose.
So Docker is the engine itself that is going to maintain is going to create and maintain and at the end of their life cycle destroy our containers. If you want to start a Docker container, you can use commands to tell Docker to do this, and they work. The problem is, if for whatever reason that container goes down, you are going to have to find that exact command you used, who knows, 5 months ago, 2 years ago? It can be a long time. So there's this other tool that Gary is installing right now, which is called Docker Compose. And essentially what Docker Compose allows us to do is have a pre-configured sort of template that we can edit and fit our needs. And that is in turn going to tell Docker what and how to create.
actually, the most recent version of Docker embedded the composer itself. I mean,
Yeah.
Docker space compose.
Yeah, but it depends on your distribution because that's still quite new. So we personally prefer using the older Docker Compose because of syntaxing issues we have, but you can use newer versions as well.
Docker Compose is installed.
Okay. So the hardest part of adding all of the required software has been done now. Now is the part that should be a bit easier.
Yeah, this is the Docker Compose file. It
Can
contains.
you make it full screen?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
It's legible now.
Can you read this? Okay. Okay.
Well, a smart guy did this, not me, not who knows who. But this is the Docker Compose file. It contains the nginx, which in this case will be the reverse proxy, it has the Let's Encrypt, which will provide us with the SSL certificate. It has a MariaDB database. We need to change these variables to make them more secure if we like to do this in sort of production way. But for this case, they are enough. Also, the main part is the image for the Docker, for the Nextcloud application we're going to install. And also we need to put our domain name in the network, so these containers can all communicate with each other.
So in practice, what we are doing is we're setting more than just one container, because one of the containers is Nextcloud, and that's certainly what we want. But Nextcloud needs other softwares to function the way that it does. So if you see on the indentation, can you send it to the beginning of the file? There you go. The lines from proxy up to restart unless stop, that's one of our containers. And what that container in specific does is whenever we go to that address with our browser, it says, hey, I'm working, here's the content that you were asking for. So as Gary said, we have 4 containers, one for our web server, one for our database server where we store stuff like our user accounts, our passwords, our calendars, and stuff like that. And what was the final one? Oh yeah, Nextcloud itself.
Nextcloud and the certification is Let's Encrypt.
Yeah, so to talk a bit more about Let's Encrypt. In case you haven't heard, what Let's Encrypt does is it provides you free TLS certificates where you can use them to configure HTTPS. You know the little padlock icon you have in your browser that says this site is secure?
Like this one.
That one? That means that we are using HTTPS, and it means that Gary, because we don't fully trust Gary cannot sniff our details when we are logging into Nextcloud and he's in the same network. You can avoid it. We would really recommend not avoiding it. It's free, so there's nothing to lose by adding it.
Free toys.
Yay!
Always is good to have free toys.
Yep.
At any place. Either free without any money or free freedom.
Or yeah. That's a good question.
Costless freedom. We want costless freedom.
Yeah, we want a lot of stuff. So.
Yeah. Discover the container.
Did you update the variable?
Yeah, I did it before.
Okay. Do you want to show others how to update the variable?
Just use your favorite text editor. In my case, it's none.
So there are certain options in Nextcloud. If you can go down to the Nextcloud containers. There we go.
Just lagging a bit.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. In the environment section, one Nextcloud can be different from another Nextcloud because one can be my personal Nextcloud, the other can be Gary's. And so there are certain parameters that we can edit to make it behave the way that we want. In Docker, we do that by defining them under the environment block. And for example, what we're doing with the first line is we're telling the web server of Nextcloud that, hey, the URL you are going to use is going to be this one.
So we need to create a Docker network.
You have a space, that's fine. You don't have internet?
I need to create a recovery.
Okay. When we have finished writing this file and editing it to what we want, we can use this command which says docker-compose space up. And what it does, if we try to run it, is it's going to try, yeah, go ahead, is that it's going to, first of all, get all of the images, get all of the, how to say, the operating system of the container, and it starts downloading it into our local computer. This process is dependent on the internet speed, so it might be very fast, it might be very slow, depending on your internet. In this case, the reason it's going so fast is because this is a computer that's connected somewhere else, so it doesn't have to rely on the internet that our laptop is using right now.
You can also try this on your computer when you go home, because you can simply change the domain to your local IP of your machine and have it hosted on your computer.
So there you go. What I did right now, other than show a lot of error messages, I guess it's trying to get the certificate. But if we go up here, you can see these lines that says creating, that's where it started creating our containers, and then it starts creating data. There seems to be a lot of stuff with red, so that's probably a bad thing. But in actuality, what is being done is that it's trying to get the... Can you remove my selection, please? No. Thanks. It's trying to get that certificate that we wanted. Can you change this Atomica? Okay, so we have one small typo in our backend changes. So while Gary tries to fix that, do you have any questions as of right now about Docker or containers or Nextcloud? Yes?
You said that we can change the local host to the, in order to do it at home. How exactly, which step do we mess with in order to do that?
I'm not sure I got your question.
You said that we can do it locally at home by changing the
Right.
host.
Yeah.
Is it one of the steps that you already showed?
No, so there are a couple of ways for doing this. There's ways for you to access your Nextcloud outside of your home, or just inside the internet connection where that Nextcloud is. What we have done is we've done some backend changes where we have a domain and we say that this domain points to this computer. So the reason we did that in advance is because DNS takes some time to propagate. We'd be more than happy to share the stats. We have a booth downstairs. But when you are using this in a local environment, and for example, you cannot get an SSL certificate, instead of what we had as nextcloud-FOSSCOMM.cloud68.co, you can use the local address of your Nextcloud, which is probably going to be 192.168.1 point something. Okay, did you get it? No?
Not sure.
No, didn't get it. So what we're gonna do is, good thing is we're gonna show exactly that, how we can do it without the certificate and in a local environment. Okay, so going back to our image here, we have nginx right here, but we can look at it later. Let's go to our app configuration, which is right here. And in the virtual host, we are going to remove the domain parts, and we're going to add the local address that it will have. You can think of this as 192.168 and so on. So this is our address of that computer, and we're going to go back in here. Because we are using the address to also reflect the setup at home, we cannot get SSL certificates for an IP in itself. We can only get them for the domain. So what we have to do is we have to comment out this container that did the SSL certificate. In Docker Compose, the way to do that is you can use, what do you call it, hashtag in English? The pound sign. This can be here on top, here. Okay, so what we did first was we removed that part of configuration that was going to cause us issues. The second part is we also have to tell Nextcloud its new address, which will be this. Since we have added dependencies, in Docker you can have dependencies. So what you can do is you can say, I want this container to be running, but this container relies on another container. So that's what this block here depends on is doing. The issue right now is we're saying it depends on Let's Encrypt, but if you look ahead, up here, we have actually disabled that configuration. So we also have to make sure we remove it from the dependencies, which is here. And we can also disable this part for now. Oh yeah, no, sorry, we shouldn't disable this part. We have to only disable this port right here, because this one, port 443, is the port that's used for HTTPS encryptions. Okay. Let's go ahead and save and try it again. So as you can see, it showed less stuff that were being created as well. But we have an issue because our proxy, that software that did the configuration of Let's Encrypt, is saying I cannot find this directory because our configuration is also telling it to use Let's Encrypt. So what we'll do for now is we'll also decouple this other component, which is the web server. In a production system, we will want the full file to be used because it's a very, very bad practice to have unencrypted communication go over the wide area network or the public internet. But for now, we can get rid of it in order to simplify our setup. I'm going to copy this part here. 90% of getting an instance up and running is actually exactly what we're seeing right now, which are the weird issues we're having. Okay. And we'll try to add it right here. But don't forget that you need to be careful on container dependencies, because here's what happens when we try to start it. It's not going to do anything at all. But also, this is not very helpful to figure out what we did wrong. Okay, it says it's in line 39, but if you don't do it at the moment that you are removing one of the services, it's very likely it will cause you 5 hours of pain later on. Are we? No, we're over the time limit.
What?
Are we over the time?
A bit, but like you can, I think. Wait, I think you forgot to delete the ports there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do we remember the address? No, we don't.
And yeah, you are.
We're 5 minutes over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll try to wrap it up. So I went direct. I'm sorry for not explaining the step, but essentially what I was trying to do was get the address of this computer we were talking to just now and try to put it into the web browser. So if you do this in a home environment, this will be another address, but you need to be careful that when you do local deployments, you cannot access this from any network. So if you're outside your home and you want to access a very important file, it's not possible unless you already download it. That's not a limitation of Nextcloud itself, more so a limitation of our setup. But once we are in this page, essentially what we have to do is create our account and our password. Well, I'll just use a random one for that. There we go. And we're gonna go
To set up the database.
Okay, here we have a drop-down that says storage and database. The storage, the data folder is already pre-filled out by us, but we have to do the database configuration ourselves because Nextcloud has no way of just guessing these values.
Using this Nextcloud.
No, you remember the things?
So this is data that is on, that can be found inside the Docker.
Sorry?
We can find the database data inside the Docker.
Yeah, so what Gerjan is feeling right now is the details that we were seeing before. You remember when we were changing the address? It's the same thing, it's just that Gary remembers them because he was setting them up. But we can do that, yes. No, I already put them.
Yeah, we did a mistake.
Ah, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Memory was not bad.
So, as you were saying before, what we have to do is put the configuration of our database. And we have defined them in here. So for example, the user itself is Nextcloud as well as the database. And you can hack this if you want because it's not going to be up for too long. But the password for that is MySQL. So we go here. Oh, I actually did one more configuration issue, which is this one, and that's why it wasn't working for Gary. So what this line does is, in Docker, because we want things to be private, right? We don't, if there is a problem with Nextcloud, for example, we don't want that to affect the rest of our infrastructure. And Docker isolates them into separate networks. So if you want your database to be able to talk with Docker, you also have to put them in the same network. And stop the containers and then recreate them. One very useful thing to remember is that when you run Docker compose up, it's going to start things in the foreground. So if you close your SSH connection, it's going to fail. That's why we add the -d option, which will start them and put them in the background. If we want to check the logs again, we can just say docker compose logs. Okay. That's it. Okay. That's not working. I'm afraid we're over the time session.
Yeah, you are.
So
It is, you're like over 9 minutes, but it's, the other guys haven't arrived yet, I think.
shall we go
I
on?
mean, you can actually wrap up.
This can go
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
This has the potential to go on for like hours.
So as you can see, sometimes things can really backfire because we ran this setup when we were rehearsing this presentation, and we had the same exact configuration options, and it worked 5 times. But we got on stage and it's not working.
Amazing.
That's fun.
Amazing.
That's always fun.
There's that thing with slide.
But there are a lot of tutorials around. So
Yeah.
it's pretty.
We will also be at the booth because when's the next speaker?
He's they're late actually.
Okay. But if the next speaker has to present, you can find us at the booth and we can also go over the configuration there.
Okay.
Until then, yes, we can.
Go back on that screen.
Which screen?
Over there.
This one?
And not there.
Not the error.
Leave the arrow.
Okay, so what could possibly...
Is this so that the installer tries to connect to the database?
Right, so what's happening right now is we have a database, we have created it in our database server, but it's empty, it doesn't have a structure. When we initially install Nextcloud, which is this screen that we are seeing, we want it to be able to talk to our database, because what it will do right now is it's going to create this template that it will later use. And then we can also add users, we can add more people on board, or have calendars.
In another word, the database has an existing non-empty database, right?
The database is empty. When we initially create it, we don't really have any template. Nextcloud makes sure it creates that template for you.
Okay.
So the first step was the database, and creates the template.
So what I am thinking about the problem is that usually in Docker, you, in order for one container to communicate with another one, you can use the service name as its host name.
Yep, that's what we're doing. So if you see database host right here, we're saying DB, which if we go back and reference this with our Docker Compose, we can see that, okay, yeah, okay. Apparently it was Nextcloud-MariaDB, not DB. So,
It was the database.
yeah.
Okay.
Sure, why not?
But it worked.
And it also works sometimes. So, congrats. Okay, I can actually explain to you what the issue was. But if you see here, we have 4 options, but 2 of them are for passwords. We have MySQL, but we also have the root password. When we have created this database, we have not said that the owner of the database should be this user that's called Nextcloud. So what was happening in our connection was that Nextcloud was able to authenticate as the Nextcloud user in the database, but it wasn't able of putting that template that we were speaking before. It wasn't able to push that because it didn't have the right privileges. And so, okay, I'm gonna skip the installation of the recommended apps just because of time. But after we have done this, our Nextcloud instance should be up and running. This is the install wizard, which tells you more about Nextcloud. But the very cool part about Nextcloud is the fact that it's very easy to add new users, and you don't have to do all of those terminal stuff that we were doing after you have set it up. And yep, that's it.
All right.